Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. I'm Kim Greenhouse, and boy, do we have a doozer for you today. Now, before we begin, I know that many of you think that you have faith. I know you do. You talk about it, but the truth is that if you have real faith, you act from it. It's not just a concept. And many of you, and many people in the world, we say, oh, they have such courage. And we would never do what our guest has done, because that kind of courage and bravery is otherworldly. It takes a totally different kind of human being to do what our beloved guest did. Now, our guest did an 8-year solo journey circumventing the globe. And at the time, she was the first and the oldest woman to do that. She set out in 1989 at age 48 about her 31-foot sailboat. It was called Southern Cross. She covered 27,000 miles across 40 countries. I had anxiety moving to Europe. I can't even imagine this. She completed her voyage in 1997 in Acapulco Harbor. And let me tell you what she faced. Uncharted reefs, equipment breakdowns, near collisions with ships, severe storms, weeks of isolation, mechanical failures, and horrific weather. What kind of faith do you have to live in and do that? She is the author of the autobiography, By the Grace of the Sea, a woman's solo Odyssey around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor and privilege to welcome Pat Henry to It's Rainmaking Time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to join you.
It's really true that we talk about faith and we talk about bravery, but very few acts of life require the kind that you stepped into when you took this journey. You have an extensive book with a lot of information and so much information in it about what happened. But I want you to share with the audience and audiences who have not read your book and are unfamiliar with you, why did you do this? Why put yourself in that kind of risk and danger?
Wow, that's a many-pronged kind of question. Part of it is timing. It was a point in my professional life when I needed to make a big change. I had already sailed 40,000 miles on other people's boats. So I wasn't going with no experience. Had I not had that, I don't know that I could have done this, but that helped. And the fact that on those trips on other people's boats, I was the navigator. And that makes a huge difference. If you can figure out where you are, you can get where you want to go.
Well, wait, talk about what does it mean to be a navigator? Tell everybody who doesn't do any sailing. Does that mean that you're the map follower? That you're looking at a map to see where you're going?
Well, you're placing where you are on the map and then deciding, how do I get from here to there? That's the navigator. But the navigator, it's different today than it was when I did this trip, and even more different from the trips I did before.
Explain it.
Remember? Well, in the old days, they talked about the sextant. And you may have seen photographs with somebody with something up to their eye and they're twiddling with it. And that's the very old way that people found out where they were. They were measuring the angle from the horizon to the body, like the sun or the moon or the stars. And then with that, and countless tables and calculations, you say, that's where I am. You hope. So that's navigating in the very old way. Today, people just look at their GPS and go, oh, that's where I am. Put a point on the chart if they're smart, or just kind of carry on. The GPS will say, well, turn left at the corner. So things have changed a great deal. And I didn't have money for a GPS. So part of this voyage, I was still using the sextant and or the old sat nav system. So it gets complicated.
Oh,
But
wait, one more thing. Did you use a
yeah,
compass? Does a compass do it? Will a compass
well,
be enough too?
no, you can't. Compass can't tell you where you are. It can only tell you what direction you're pointing the boat, and that's all. And but there, so many other factors. If there's metal things around the compass, it'll be a false reading. If you're close to the equator, then that will be a different thing. You have to subtract or add or whatever to adjust for that. There's a lot of bits and pieces, and I loved all that.
Well, when you, prior to this particular journey that you are known for, and you said you did 40,000, was it 40,000 miles
Yes,
before this?
before
So,
this.
so you did that with a sextant and not a GPS, or you did use a GPS? I'm not quite clear.
There was no
Oh my
GPS.
God. Okay.
That was, yeah, we're talking end of the 70s, early 80s, and there were no GPSs out in the private. I mean, boats just didn't have them.
So everybody right now who's attempting to do what you did, who's using a GPS, if they don't know how to use a sextant and the GPS goes down, what happens, Pat?
You have nailed the primary query. My argument for people that say, "Oh, I'll just have two GPSs." I said, "Well, saltwater and electronics don't mix really well, and maybe those GPSs aren't going to work, or maybe they turn the system off. Oh, national emergency, no private use. And if you don't know how to figure it out without all that, you're in a lot of trouble." So yes.
When you learned how to use a sextant, did someone teach you, or did you read instructions? How does it work?
Well, this was kind of crazy. There were 6 of us on this boat headed from California to Hawaii, and 2 women who'd never been on a boat before, myself and 3 guys, one of whom was a Navy or no, Air Force pilot, and they all have to know how to use sextants and whatever. And so he's the official navigator. And one day I'm sitting on the deck, it was about 3 days out, and I went, "Bubonic plague. The whole boat is going to get bubonic plague except me. I have to save us. I've got to figure out how to do this." So I got him and I said, "Larry, you've got to teach me how to do it. You need a backup. I insist." So he said, "Well, you do this and you do that." And there was no, sextant use for dummies or anything like that. So he taught me, and very soon he said, "Well, you can take over." And I did the rest of the navigating
That's
and
great.
navigated on other boats. So, yeah.
Very, very wise. So that's the prior trip. Now I want to
Yes.
know when you were with other people sailing,
Yeah.
was it harder because more people have issues? How do you guys go to the bathroom? I'm sorry to ask you. What happens? How does anybody go? And where do you go? How does it work?
Well, it helps if you're not female. You can tuck yourself away somewhere. Um, all the boats I was on were pretty good size, so we all had indoor plumbing. And so it wasn't really a big issue unless it was a huge storm and you couldn't leave the cockpit or what have you. But it wasn't anything we had to worry about.
How did you avoid getting seasick?
Well, I actually, in the very beginning, I didn't totally avoid getting it. I didn't have, before I was on that first voyage with the 6 people, I just was kind of tired and curled up in a sailbag somewhere for about 3 days. And all of a sudden I came to and went, "Oh, great." And then I noticed over the years that if it was a long journey, on day 10, all of a sudden, the rhythm of the water and my internal rhythm just synchronized.
Oh,
and
really?
I was good. Yeah,
So there's an
so I really,
acclimation.
yeah, oh, definitely. We synchronize with the rhythms of the world. We don't know that we're doing that, but it happens. And so that was a piece of it. And I looked forward to that, but there were surprisingly few passages that lasted more than 10 days. So I was really glad when I had a nice long passage.
When I was a young child, my whole family, we used to go on sailboats in San Diego because we lived in Los Angeles. And
Right?
one day I just lay down on the bow of the boat and fell asleep and woke up and thought I was going to die. I was so sick.
Oh, well, you're
I was so seasick. Like I was like, I'm never sleeping on the bow again.
yeah, you've got more motion on the bow.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, you're better toward the middle, but you're also better on deck than below. You're
Really?
if your Yeah, if your eye can connect to the horizon, it helps you stabilize. But when you're down below and things are going like this, your ear can't tell you where you are in space.
Many years ago, I interviewed a very incredible guy named Gavin Menzies. He wrote 14, I think it was 1421, the whole Columbus expedition.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I interviewed Gavin actually a couple times. We did one on peer review with Dr. Timothy Ball, and so anyway, he wrote several books on the European Renaissance, and it was so interesting as he talked about sailing back then during that part of the interview. I've always been interested, how did sailors do it in the past, right? They didn't necessarily have pills they could take, or how did they avoid getting sick? How did they go to the bathroom? Like the next question I have to ask you, how did you eat? Where was food? What did you eat?
Well,
Now we're talking about the six people. You just got to distinguish the six people or your solo journey.
I'll talk about the solo journey.
You
That's
got
more
it.
interesting.
Yes.
So though with the 6 people, I was always the provisioner, and I have a pretty good skill at planning meals for 6 or 1 to last 5 months. So if I was leaving, say, from Singapore, going to be making a bunch of passages to eventually get to the Mediterranean, I was shopping always for 5 months, because if something happened and I lost some system that I needed and I'm just bobbing around out there and I can't reach anybody, I might have to feed myself for 5 months. So that was always basic. Short distance, no, I'm not, that's not a big deal. So, and then you have to strip the labels off of cans and bottles, because if they came unstuck, they could clog a pump in the bilge.
Fascinating.
So then you have to label everything. And in the early days, we would dip them in varnish, and then, put things in all these little cubby holes and know where they are. And
So
so
what did you
that's
buy? Pat, what did you buy? I want to hear what you ate on these long journeys. Come
Well,
on.
I ate all kinds of dried, like beans and lentils and rice and all of that. I had square jars that all fit in this compartment, and they were, all different kinds of dried foods. And I had a pressure cooker. I had a good stove with an oven and a broiler. As I remember, there was a broiler. It was a really good stove. That came on the boat. I was lucky. I brought some tinned food, such as tinned chicken or tinned cheese. We don't think of tinned cheese, but from Australia, they had tinned cheese sold all over the world. So I got that. I had canned fruits. I had as much fresh fruit as I thought would hold out. And that varied, of course, as I went around the world. So, what else did I get?
Does a
I remember
31
that,
foot, sorry, Pat, does a
yeah,
31-foot sailboat, that also has a bathroom or a toilet?
I had a tiny, tiny little bathroom. I could sit down and do whatever you do and clip my nails and brush my teeth without moving. Yeah. No shower in it, just a sink and a mirror and a
Pat, there's
toilet.
no shower. What did you
Yeah.
do? When
Buckets
you
of cold water. Yeah. When I got into harbor, it was kind of a inconvenience. So I had a little canopy made, one that I could roll up with sides, and I'd tie them down and be, very careful about my showering because there were boats around me, and I was trying to be private.
you didn't know, how did you know that where you were going, that you would arrive there safely? What about waves? What about sharks? Let's talk about it.
Well, sharks don't just show up in the middle of the ocean much. They really weren't on my mind sharks, except the day that I had to go overboard and fix something on the bottom of the boat
I'm already
near the
nervous
beginning of
hearing
the
about
trip.
it.
I know. Yeah, I went through the movies. I thought of things that happened in movies and books I'd read and all that. And then as I went over the side, I went, oh, yeah, the famous rhythm of, the
Jaws, yeah.
shark coming. Yeah, Jaws coming. It was on my mind. I'm looking around and hoping not to see anything.
How
I
long were you
wasn't
in
that
the water
far from
trying to
land.
fix something, and how did you know how to fix it?
Well, I was in the water 15 or 20 minutes. And on the earlier voyages, I had every job that anybody else had. And they said, oh, that thing's wrong with the engine again. Pat hasn't done it. Send her down to do it. So I'm in there straddling the engine and the boat's in motion and all. So I had good training. And sometimes on that boat, I'd be the only person left. Everyone went home or whatever. And I had to fix everything. And I had an inclination toward mechanical things I enjoyed, you know, trying to figure out what was wrong. I had my How to Be Your Own Diesel Mechanic book, and I would go through and find directions on how to do one thing or another. And I prepared before I left.
What if there's no wind?
Well, that certainly can happen. Oh boy, the trip to Bali. There was no wind. I had conversations with the sea snakes and the little jellyfish. Um, a boat like mine doesn't carry enough fuel, nor could my budget afford to buy the fuel to get all the way from Darwin to Bali. And so you just sit there and every morning, no, there's no wind here either. Each boat's calling in on a check-in, and nobody had wind. So you just have to wait. I mean, you have light wind sails. They're usually huge things, which I had to learn to manage by myself. They called it a sock, and you pull the sock down really fast and engulf that sail before it got full of, whatever. Anyway, those are the things you had to do to control it if the wind came up. But otherwise, you're sitting there and, okay, well, let's try that again. And
So let me see if I understand. You literally, in a sailboat, have to work those sails all the time.
yeah, absolutely, you have to.
Otherwise, you're
And,
stationary. Is that right?
well, you're not optimal. You might be going faster than you should be going, and that's not good. So you need to be able to slow the boat down when it needs to, and then you have to know how to let it increase the speed again.
Why is it not good for the boat to go faster?
Well, things can break for one thing.
Oh, I got
You've
you. Okay.
overpowered. Yeah, you've overpowered, or you can put yourself like you don't want to be, small boats like that. Usually I was on trimarans, okay? And with trimarans, you're more stable. In a little boat, you're like that. And in the beginning, this boat is tipping over, this doesn't feel very good.
I'm tipping over hearing about it.
Yeah. So you get used to that and you come. I remember there was one sail one night and the boat is over and I'm standing up there and I feel like king of the world, queen of the world. I said, yeah, I've got it. I'm there. I can do it. And I was a long way around the world when that happened, but it was a good feeling.
Did you have any telecommunications equipment with you?
Well, when I left, I had a ship to shore kind of thing that goes about 12 miles. I'm coming into Acapulco. Where do you want me to put the boat? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. Or with the large ship that's approaching the tiny little sailboat over here, please identify yourself and what are your intentions? But that's all you could do. And then I had a receiver so I could listen to Voice of America and listen to them, when the students were marching in Beijing and all of these things that happened when the wall came down.
So you had a shortwave radio with you?
Well, that's not, I don't know if that's a shortwave or not, but whatever that is, I can't put anything out. I can only receive.
Right, right.
And so when I arrived someplace, first thing I'd send a telegram. Remember those? To my
Of
family.
course.
I'm here. I try to say something about a telegram to some kids. They go, what is that? They have no concept of a telegram. But that would be the first thing if I had enough money. Otherwise, I had to mail them a letter saying I'm here. And they were kind of wishing that we could have a call. Wasn't in my budget. And so
Calls were very
on the way,
expensive. Sorry to interrupt you. Calls were very
yeah,
expensive back then.
yeah. And so on my way to New Zealand, I heard they were going to give a ham test. And my sister was flying down to visit me. And I told my folks, I said, if you'll get the ham radio, I'll get the license. And Libby can bring the radio with her. And so that's what happened. And all of us were wandering around in Russell, New Zealand, going, did, whatever. It was cloudy look in our eyes. But that's what we did. And I went ahead and I got the next level. So I became KM6DR.
Are you still KM6DR?
Well, I think I still am, but I've never paid anything after the end of the trip. I didn't continue to do ham radio stuff. But
Would you ever use ham radio again?
not that I can think of. We've got everything else like satellites. I, I I'm sure they're still using ham because it's well, what do I want to say? It's a free system, but you can't do business.
Right, right.
So on AM radio, I couldn't call and say, I need a haul out when I get in, tell me where to go and how much is it going to cost. You can't
Are
do
you
that
sure
on the
you
ham.
can't communicate? It's just communication, isn't it?
It's communication, but not commercial.
Right. But
Yeah,
you
so
weren't
you can't.
making money from your trip. You were
No, but
spending.
they were.
I got you. I got
They
you.
can't do it. Yeah.
Let's talk about your financial situation before you set out solo. What was it like, and how did you get that boat?
Okay. Well, I got the boat. I sold my house. I had to make a big shift in my life, and it included that I needed now to find work. And I'd been the CEO of a company.
What kind?
I had an import company with several branches. So I was doing importing of textiles, home textiles, placemats and all from Asia. I was doing technical fabrics like to put around a radar system so that there's no interference, electromagnetic
Wow.
radio frequency.
I think you need to go back into import. We all need that.
Yeah, no kidding. You really do. Somebody bought the fabric and lined their little cabin in the woods somewhere. I remember that. But anyway, so that was what I was doing, and I had employees, and I fell on my face big time. And at the end, there was nothing to come out of the business, but I had bought a house a couple years before, which had increased in value some. I sold it, And the same day we signed the papers, I signed the papers for the boat and bought the boat. And I drove a good bargain, so I got a good boat at a good price. And
Okay.
that's where it came from.
To do this alone, when in fact your experience was with 6 other people, is a total distinction in experiences. There was no
Yeah.
help for you on that boat. It was just you, the ocean, and the sails, right?
And 300 books.
300 books.
Yeah. That was important because that's where that How to Be Your Own Diesel Mechanic was.
Why alone? Why alone?
Why alone? When I was on other boats, and you come into port, and here's some guy madly dashing up and down the docks going, "Is there anybody here that could go with me to XYZ? Anybody here that would like to sail with me?" He couldn't do it alone without somebody. He didn't believe in himself. He didn't know what he thought he probably ought to know. He'd never done it, whatever it was. And so when I was getting ready, I thought, I am never going to be that guy running up and down the dock looking for some stranger. One friend had to call a big ship shortly after leaving Mexico to take this guy off, and they took him off in a straitjacket. He got out there with a guy that was scary. And I just said, I don't want that. I want to
Wow.
know I can do it. And when I know I can do it, then I have a choice. That's how it started. And on the way to the South Pacific, I can only think of about 5 or 6 women. I actually wasn't totally the first in the world. I was the first in the U.S. And I could think of about 6 women that had done such a thing. And I thought, you know what? If I don't ever take anybody on this boat, maybe I could be number 10. So that was a piece of it, what kept me going solo. There were other things too. I liked it. I liked being alone.
What about genuine, realistic humility with you, the ocean, and the conditions that could be potentially really scary? Waves you're not in control of. God knows. What was there fear?
The way I look at that is normally you're too busy. If the waves are big and the wind is up and all of that, and I had up to 28-foot seas, which was almost as long as the boat was long, that tall.
I'm getting nervous hearing this.
Yeah, that was pretty overwhelming. And I had just at the bottom end of hurricane force winds. So that's at the 60 knot level, 60 to 65. When you get to that, for me, I'm going through my file cabinet in my head. What else can I do? What else should I check? Around, check. Nowhere here. No, that line is okay. Is there something I need to tie down? It is nonstop checking and tweaking and keeping control. And you may be down to the tiniest little sail, we could say a handkerchief, just to keep control. So the other scary thing out there are the big ships. Can't see you and don't care if they do, for the most part.
Oy.
And that's scary. They're going faster than I am. And I've got to be able to predict, that front that's coming toward me. Am I better off going here or there? And once I make that, I'm committed. And maybe if I made it wrong, we're getting closer and closer. So that was my biggest concern more than anything else. So, and then what's out there at night?
Let's talk about what's out there at night. Oh, wait, I want to go back to one thing before we do that, Pat.
Okay.
As you're dealing with 28-foot waves, and you don't know how long they're going to be there. You don't know that when you're in the ship, when you're in the boat, right? So what about stamina? What if about fatigue? What about dehydration?
I didn't think about dehydration very much, but it certainly could be a factor, So I did have a dehydration drink I could mix with lemon juice and what have you. About fear, I've forgotten all the things you've listed there.
Well, just like
Stamina.
the stamina, like your fatigue. How much can you do in 28-foot waves? And when does it end? Is it an hour of you working it? Is it 5 hours of you working it? What if you get too tired and you don't have any energy left to do it?
It could be 7 days that you're doing it.
Do you sleep?
I would sleep in the cockpit, not at all comfortable, which that was good because I didn't want to really sleep. I put a kitchen timer here and my little cockpit with no cushions, so I was on a hard surface.
Why?
And I turn it 15 minutes. I figured, well, in 15 minutes, if I get up and look around, but and I can remember at a really bad time when the boat's being tossed everywhere, I'm being tossed everywhere, and I just went below, battened the hatches, as they say, made everything secure, and just crashed. But, I couldn't just go forever. And so for the most part, you've got to be on top of it. So that 15 minutes was really critical. And then I'd get up and then I'd get 15 more. And in 2 instances, I didn't wake up and I slept 8 hours. And I woke up, oh my God, I'm here, the boat's here. I was tied on. When you're out in bad conditions, you're always clipped on, even in the cockpit.
But what if the boat, you're resting down there, you're sleeping down there, and the boat turns over?
Well, I mean, that could happen. But if you've prepared reasonably well, you've checked and checked. I didn't think it was going to go over. You keep it oriented. You don't want to go sideways where the seas hit you sideways, roll you over that way. Neither do you want to go straight down on a really steep street, steep wave, and flip over that way. All those things. And I knew people who had. So it's not unrealistic, but they were further south with even bigger seas.
Were they alone?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Did they die?
No. They got through it.
Wow.
But the boat's made to come back up.
Okay.
That's what the weighted keel is about. That keel should offset. But, if you have it prepared right and you come back up and all the same sails are there, they manage to, they pick up the wind or something, you have to be thinking ahead, and you've got lines all over the place that aren't supposed to be where they are, and you're coming up and you don't want to get caught in those, your head is going, but I never had that moment. Thank God.
What about a moment where you thought you may die? We're going to go to a quick break and we'll be right back with adventurer Pat Henry, who also wrote By the Grace of the Sea, a woman's solo Odyssey around the world. We'll be right back to It's Rainmaking Time. It could be said that storytelling is one of the most important arts of the human race. It has lasted as long as human beings have been here. A good story draws you in, brings you in, captures your attention, initiates you into what is being spoken and shared. It retains experiences throughout life that are meant to be imparted. for humor, for reflection, for memory, to be retained. And I grew up in a family with a father that was a great storyteller. My dad, Lloyd Greenhouse, was incredible and very funny. I laugh thinking of him. He was a great storyteller. So whether I like it or not, Lloyd Greenhouse imparted his gifts to me and my other sisters. But I really respect and love storytelling. And it's a part of my entire life, business, all parts of my life. So I'd like to invite you to invite me to share some incredible stories at your special events, whether they're business or personal. And this could be considered part of entertainment and teaching. But I'm going to begin with a story that happened when I was 26 years old. And we'll finish it when I see you. 26 years old, I'm working at a company called Concord Communications and teaching tennis on the side. And I go with my dear friend, and we've traveled to India. And I've never been out of the country before. And we land in Bombay, and I'm sick after about, I don't know, within 48 hours, like deathly sick from the smog, I don't know what. And I'm going to kind of cut, but to the chase on this, because the full story will be told in person. But we end up going all over India. We're in Bombay, we go to Madras, we go to Mahabalipuram, Kanchipuram, Halabid, Belur, Bangalore, Madras. And then we go all the way up to Delhi and to Varanasi and to Agra, where the Taj Mahal is. It was a wild, very, very insightful, shocking, revelationary. It's really a revelationary trip. So we're planning to go to the Taj Mahal, and in the morning, there was a carpet that was purchased, and we found out on a plane flight that my friend was ripped off heavily. So she stayed back, haggling with the owner of the carpet shop, and I went off as planned with a tour to the Taj Mahal. And I get into the Taj Mahal with my group, and I have my little camera, and I'm feeling the marble walls, and in the middle of it is this big tomb, I guess of the guy who built it or commissioned it. And in the corner are these candles and like a little bowl with rupees, dollars, their dollars, and change. So I saw people dropping rupees into the bowl. And so I took a rupee out of my money belt. I was told to bring a money belt there. And I put it in the bowl, and I went back to the wall, and I'm feeling the wall and the inlay, and it's beautiful. And all of a sudden, a hand on my back shows up, and I turn around, and there's police. And they said, "Madam, come with us." And I'm like, "What?" They go, "Come with us." So they walk me across the way toward the wall. I'm like, "What is going on here?" "Let us see your passport." And I said, "Why?" "We must see your passport." So I hand him my passport. I said, "What's the problem?" And he takes out a bill and he goes, "What is this?" I said, "What is what?" You're going to have to hire me to hear this story. This is only one of the many that happen in India. See you then. What about a moment where you thought you may die?
Well, one was that it was over before I had a chance to think about it might happen. I went, wow, that could have happened. That was scary.
What was the wow? What was it, a wave?
No, it was, I didn't know at the moment what it was. I was getting ready to anchor in Singapore Harbor. It had been the end of the passage from Bali to Singapore. And I went out to the bow to prepare the anchor. And when I turned back around, I looked straight up at red and white lights right above me. Something was about to run over me.
Oh
And
my God.
yeah, it was ice water in the knees. And I raced back and jumped in the cockpit and changed the direction, changed the speed of the engine, took all kinds of measures. And what was that?
Well, was
And
it a
the
ship?
next morning, well, the next morning I could see that they had huge barges with great big derricks, cranes on them, heading out to the oil fields. And there was this little tugboat in front pulling it.
Wow.
And so the little tugboat I couldn't see, I didn't hear him. And the lights, my guess is that they were on the crane. So he couldn't change direction. He would have been run over by his own tow. I'm going, wow, that poor guy.
Oh my
He didn't
God.
call and say, who are you up there? It was midnight, no moon, no lights. And, we each had lights on, but they're minimal. Except those red and white ones, I could still see them.
When you pull into shore, are people nice to you?
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure you
think
shocked
many-
the hell out of many countries that you landed in being
Oh,
solo.
I did. I did. Yeah, one friend was waiting. He says, I've already got my dinghy ready to take you into the port captain in Aden, Yemen. He says, I can't wait to see the look on their faces.
Oh my God.
Yeah, all up the Red Sea was like that. Funny things that happened. But in general, people were curious and friendly and tried to help. And, I didn't find anyone mean or nasty that I can think of. Probably somebody will find something in the book and they'll go, oh, she forgot about that guy. But
For the most part, people received
yeah,
you.
curious, especially that it was a woman. They were very curious.
How long, for example, would you want to stay once you arrived in shore? Did you have to pay to put your boat there, your sailboat there?
40 countries, and it was across the board. How long they would let you stay. For example, Tahiti, you had to be out before hurricane season. They didn't want some boat floating around out there they had to rescue in a hurricane. So your rules were you had to be out. So lots of that. Other places it was for customs. They didn't want your boat to become a local boat. So you had to go, or the boat had to go, or you both had to go. And so all those rules. The longest I stayed anywhere was Singapore.
How
In
long?
one place without leaving. And I was there 13 months. And when I checked out, the port captain's looking, he says, so you arrived October something, and you're leaving November? He says, that's good. They'd say they don't want anyone there more than 3 weeks. That's all. One guy went in to check out. He said, but I haven't spent all my money. Don't care. Go. And so the guy's looking at it, and he looked at me, he said, how did you do that? That was all I said. He
Now,
said, you get out of here by midnight tomorrow.
what about money? What kind of money did you take with you? What about foreign exchange? Now, I know that you did, was it watercolor painting?
Yes.
I want you to talk about the finances and what you did to bring in money.
Okay. So going down the coast, I thought, boy, I'm in good shape. But every time I stopped, I had to buy, I think I need another battery. And oh, no, that's not working. So on. And I was outfitting the boat all the way down the coast.
What does that
By the
mean?
time-
What does outfitting a boat mean?
Buying equipment, installing it,
Okay.
getting the supplies to maintain it. So it was a constant process. And of course, as long as the money's there, it's going to go out. If you don't have it, it can't. So when I checked out of Acapulco, I had $300 and the whole world waiting out there for me. By the time I got to Tahiti, it was down to $3. Only the most expensive place you could come into, practically. So I spent $1 going to town, and another friend, another artist, and we each paid $1 to take the bus to town. And when we got into town, we went to the market, and this woman said, "Who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get here?" She was from Wisconsin. And we
She
told her
offered
we
you
were
some
on.
cheese?
No, she didn't have the cheese with her. And we told her we were on boats and we were artists. My friend made earrings. And at that time, I had little tiny paintings I'd started doing, realizing, Pat, 300 isn't going to do it. You're going to have to make some money. And I had art supplies. So I said, well, I'll be a painter. I only knew how many starving artists. But anyway, so she said, oh, I'll have one of your little paintings and I'll take a pair of earrings. And we looked at each other and said, okay, let's go to dinner.
That's
And
incredible.
it was, I don't know how I felt the world was going to take care of me, but, the most amazing things happened. And I had exhibitions all over the world, and the paintings got bigger and bigger. And that's how I paid my way.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Securing your items on the ship, on the boat. How did you do
Yeah.
that? And did you even care whether you did or not?
Oh, you bet. That was the precious penny. I wasn't going to lose it. I couldn't afford to lose it. That might be the one thing I needed to save my life. So everything on that boat got my attention. And that would be clipped on, tied on, secured in some way, outside or inside, always.
Friends that you met, people that you met that you stayed in contact with after you left. What would you say your percentage of people that you stayed in contact with, not necessarily while you were sailing, but throughout your life?
Wow. I don't know. I can put a percentage on that.
Would you
I
say
mean,
2, 3, 5?
oh, way more than that. Way more than that. I have boxes of cards from people, boat cards, like your business card. They had a boat card. And we all signed the books, and I can go back and those faces just float right up. And sometimes we hear from somebody, or we have an inspiration to writers say, "Oh, hey, I'm driving across the country. Are you guys still in or Denver or something?" I'll stop and say hi. And then very precious people all of a sudden disappear, and we never know,
What
what
happened to them?
happened. Yeah.
There's this phenomenon that a lot of times in business, the business mind says, you have to have all these particulars in the know. You have to know all this stuff before you set out on a journey like that. Now, you knew all this critical information about sailing and managing the sailboat, but you didn't know how the journey was going to turn out. You didn't know how long you'd be gone. You didn't know all of what you would face. If you could make it from, Singapore to Tahiti, or Tahiti to Singapore, or to Yemen, or what was going to happen, which culture you landed in that would or wouldn't receive you. And so there seems to be something in a real adventure where you give up the need to know the details of what happens. You prepare fully and you set about. Does that sound right?
That sounds very right. Very well analyzed. I mean, there's an optimism, certainly, and you've
Yes.
made plans. I would make every year an itinerary and send it to my family. So if you want to keep in touch with me, mail this letter to this address on this date in June, 6 months from now. And So I ended up having to stop places I really didn't particularly want to stop after all, but I knew there might be mail there. Um, so that was enough for me. And then there's just surprises. Somebody said, you really ought to go check this out. It's amazing. And you go, well, why not? I can, within limits. You maybe didn't, if you make a list in some places, I'm going to go down your coast and I'm going to stop here or there, and you change your mind, they're not happy. They want you to follow your program. But it varied. Every country was different. And I will have to admit that we all had a little bit of the renegade in us. I left from uh, Las Canarias
Where is that?
for Barbados, and I couldn't find the guy to check out and get the proper documents and get stamped and all. I went, well, they're not there. I'm leaving. And I just left. And I thought, people say, well, what are you going to do when you get to the other side? I was going, oh, you know those people in the Canaries. They're so irresponsible. And then you become allied with the people you're checking in with. Of course, you're not here, you know. And so, but we did have that little bit of, floating above it all kind of an aspect to our thinking about things sometimes.
So I want to talk to you about family and friends. What kind of influences, what did people say to you before you left on a solo level? There are so many people out there in the world and out here in the world that want to do something that's uncommon, unorthodox, and their spirit is leading them to do it. And they've got people in their ear telling them all the terrible things that are going to happen to them if they do it. So were there people that cared about you, loved you, but didn't want you to go? Who was talking to you? What did you deal with?
Right. Yeah. The one that comes to mind is an old school chum, Harry Stern. And we had stayed in contact, and my mother knew him and all. And he asked my mother, why does Pat have this death wish? You do not want someone to ask your mother a question like that if it wasn't already in there. She's now busy working on it. And at the end, when I was in Turkey, Harry and his wife and friends came over and they chartered a boat, and we all went sailing together in Turkey. So, they came around onto my team. But yes, many people were concerned what was going to happen to me. Often in my life, I've heard, you can't do that. Over and over, I've been told, you can't do that. Many things in my life. And I just smiled and went on and did whatever it was. So I wasn't listening to much of that. And because I'd already been out on the ocean, I had more concepts about what it was going to be like than they did, more or less. So that was a favorable thing for me. And I had some friends who came to visit. I had family who came to visit, such as my sister. And not everybody, but enough that I felt connected. And it was good.
Dan had a question of how many interviews like this have you done since your journey, your solo journey?
Well, they're the interviews that I did along the way. If I was in a place, usually if I'm having an art show, they would get, the TV or whatever. Going through the Panama Canal, they put a videographer on the boat, and I had 4 line handlers on the boat, all women, videographer woman. I had 2 pilots that they insisted that we have. Usually it's 1, but this is all women. We better put 2 on. And so as we're trying to get away from the dock, I was up in the halfway area crossing the canal in Panama. And all of a sudden, one of the pilots is all alarmed. He said, there's water coming in. And I looked down. Yeah, well, the cockpit was filling with water. I said, if some of you will just go forward on the bow, I think we'll be all right. The
Oh
poor
my
boat was
God.
sitting like this with everybody back here. So that was one interview. But I did
That's
I never
wild.
will forget. Yeah, and so in places where I was having shows, that would initiate some kind of an interview. Afterward, then there was more interest, um, but unfortunately, Bill Clinton was in Mexico City, so when I finished, they wanted AP to come take photographs, and they said, "Well, there isn't anybody here, they're all with Bill." So, I'm there with a little interview with my pathetic Spanish. If I saw that thing today, I'd be so embarrassed. And then during the book tour, I was in a different round of interviews. So I've had a lot of them. I can't say none as insightful and thorough as the one we're doing today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Great questions.
Thank you. I want to talk about a lot of times when a book is written, it's in the aftermath of a life, a project, a body of work, and you're recalling progression of events. Did you do any writing or recording of yourself in the interim of your process?
None at all. I was writing letters profusely. I'd come in with a big stack of letters, expecting that the post office in Larnica has letters for me. Sometimes did and some not. My my mother and my brothers saved every letter. And at the end of the trip, there was a message from an author in Chicago, and he said, "I would like to write your book." Oh, okay. That would make sense. I could carry on painting. I was never thinking about writing a book. And he had 2 New York Times bestsellers. So I thought, well, this would be a good way to go. A book would probably get pretty good feet with this. And I thought about it, and he sent me those 2 books. And then he wrote a 6-page article for the Tribune in Chicago about my trip and me, and I was on the cover of Sunday magazine. And I read it, and I thought, that's the same voice that wrote those other 2 books. No, I want my book in my voice. Well, I don't know how to write. I have not a clue. I've never done any kind of writing, but I became determined, and I set a course. Like I'm gonna run a marathon, you start practicing. And I started morning pages, writing, 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 organizing the history, everything I could remember. I had plotting sheets. I had coastal guides. I had all kinds of stuff that I could draw on. So I could say, well, my favorite little coffee shop in Tahiti was this place, and I'd always stop and sketch. And so and I had the street name and I had the name of the place because I had all this material, but not with anything in mind other than it was just like you're traveling, you save bits and pieces. So it took 4 years, half the length of the trip, to write the book.
When the man offered to write your book and you noticed that he would write your book in his voice, explain what you mean by that. I get it, but other people may or may not understand what that means. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means to me that it sounds like the person writing, that you can hear her, that she comes through. If she's frightened or if she's happy or whatever, it's reflected. I also am absolute slave to telling the truth. And in this article, he fudged around. I had a broken hand. It really did happen in Venezuela, but he had it happening in the middle of a storm at sea. Didn't happen like that. I tell it the way it happened. I couldn't do otherwise.
Was it a mistake on his part? Was it a minor embellishment? Or did he actually, was he just inaccurate and made a mistake?
No, he did that. I think he did it intentionally. It's more
Okay.
drama. Yeah, he's a good writer. And he wrote about sports figures specifically. So he was a sailor himself. So he was really excited about doing it. And he was supportive when I said, no, I'm going to do it myself. He probably didn't think it would turn out as
What
it
did he
did.
say when you said, I think I'm going to do it myself?
Okay. I mean, what else could he say? You know, he didn't argue with me. He wished me good luck. But
Did you tell him
yeah,
why?
I don't think I ever did.
Did he ask you why?
No, I don't think he did. I don't remember that, honestly. But it doesn't stand out,
That's a
that
major
conversation.
thing. It's a major thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was for me, and I was so glad at the end because it let me weave things in, like personal relationships with the family and all of that. That became
By the grace of the
crucial.
sea, everybody. By the grace of the sea. How did you get the deal to write the book and to get it published?
That was really funny. That's McGraw-Hill is the publisher. They had an imprint. I can't remember the name of it, Bottom Press, or I don't really remember the name. But anyway, oh no, International Marine, that was it. And they wrote to me and asked me to write a how to sail book. And I was in the middle of getting proposal letters together to send to agents looking for an agent. And I wrote back and I said, well, that's not the book I want to write. And I sent them my proposal and they said, well, you've never written before. So, we don't know if you can come through or not. And anyway, they gave me a deal. I got an agent to get the deal just a little bit sweeter because I figure I have to live on that little bit of money they were going to give me to buy the rights. And I figured it would take me probably 3 years. I was off by a year, but anyway, so I got it. And I did my own book tour. I did promo all over for myself. I did 40 presentations, Chicago, Central Illinois, and all up and down the West Coast. And I even beat out Stupid White Men. Remember that book?
Uh-uh.
It was New York Times type bestseller list.
Huh.
And in San Francisco, they tally bestsellers a little differently than the New York Times does, and I ended up being above them on the list. I went, well, that's pretty good.
Was there
So
depression when you returned to Acapulco Harbor? Was there relief, but also depression that that your journey was completed?
no, I wouldn't call it that. It was
Just
like, what's next?
melancholy. Okay. What's next
Yeah.
sense?
No, what's next? What's next? Not I went, no. Where do I go now? And
Or
I
now
knew
what?
I did. Yeah, now what? And I knew I did not want to go back above the border. I wanted to stay in Mexico. And I only had enough money to get to Puerto Vallarta. But it's also the best West Coast port for hurricanes. And I've been here ever since.
Where did you, when you came back, did you stay with
Yeah.
someone? Where did you live? Did you live on your boat?
On the boat. On the boat.
Oh my God.
It was my home. Everything I had, everything I needed was there.
Didn't you miss being on land?
No, not really. I mean, I was so comfortable after 8 years of this, actually 8 years and 1 day, believe it or not. I couldn't make it in before midnight. So it became 8 years and 1 day. But um, I, mm, I'm totally contented. I can make home, a little nest, almost anywhere. And I've had many homes here. I sold the boat eventually.
Out of need or just you were done?
Well, I was living on shore and also paying dock fees. I had a women's sailing school, a very good sailing school.
Really?
Women flew down. It was I think 9-day program. And I saw these couples going, and he hadn't taught her anything. And he just assumed she didn't learn anything. And I went, she's your guarantee you're going to get to the other side. If something happens to you, she better know everything you know. So I made this school with that purpose. And I got the wives of people or girlfriends of people and taught them
That's
how to
great.
use the radio and all that. And I
Wow.
loved it. Yeah.
How long did that school continue? And what made you sell? So it was the dock fees or not enough women were in the school getting trained?
No, what the dock fees had to do with it, the boat had to pay for itself, and how's it going to do it? Well, the school, it all kind of came together. Somebody came to me and they said, I think you should start a women's sailing school.
Yeah.
And that was kind of kicked the idea off. But it was a lot of work for one person. There were two of us in the beginning, and that didn't work. It was another woman, long distance sailor. She was excellent. She was a really good teacher, really capable, but other things got in the way. And when it was only me, some days we're up to 11 hours, and I'm the one
It's too
scrubbing the
much.
boat down. It was a lot. But I was so satisfied to see what happened to those women and how they blossomed, and that was just fabulous. So then I did sell the boat after that.
So you sell the boat and
Mhm.
you're in the now what? And the school is now gone, right?
The school is gone. I'm still painting. Mostly I was painting at that time. And I'd gotten into a new form of body movement that I created a way to teach it. So I developed that program, and I've always got something new.
So you are really not retired, are you?
No, far from it. Yeah, Social Security doesn't quite fill the coffer enough. I can't retire. I'll probably still be working when I hit 100.
Do you want to live to 100?
I have pegged 107. I figure I might make that.
Did you ever pray on your boat?
I
Like a
don't know that
literal
I would.
pray, like, dear God, help me.
I
Did
I
you ever
can't.
have some of those?
Well, I had moments, when I was scrambling to get a grip on what I needed to do, and but to call it, was it prayer or not? I can't visualize me being on my knees like that.
Well, not
Exactly.
necessarily on your knees. You can sit on a couch or you can sit on a chair
No,
and pray. You know what I mean?
true, true. But I mean, in that mode,
Yeah.
I certainly didn't feel I was the biggest thing on earth and had all the answers. So, I was open to a helping hand, and however that came to me.
Do you believe in God or does what we call a intelligent, you know, divine intelligence?
Um, I feel really connected. I remember when I was an architecture student, and I'd be working on a design, and I'd go for a walk, and I'd envision all around the world about this level, my head level, um, that our brains could connect, and that for me, maybe that was that piece, that intelligence is there. I'm sure my mother is going, "Oh, is that what I did?" Anyway, she was very religious, and I couldn't do the formal church thing in the end. I couldn't do that. But, uh, the spirit of connection between the hearts, that is so real. That is so real. And that natural inclination to reach out, to connect, to help, uh, yeah, that if that's God, that's God. It could be. I mean, every society has some form of God.
Sure.
So I certainly couldn't sit here and say, no, it isn't real. It is. Comes from something very deep.
All that time that you spent alone in the sailboat and traveling like this, was it ever too much where you just couldn't stand being alone anymore and solo? You were done. You actually needed connection. You needed to communicate. The lack of it, did it get to you at a certain point?
not in quite the way I think you're thinking about.
Okay.
They always said when Pat comes in, you don't want to be the first boat she goes to visit. I had to tell them everything that happened for the last 30 days. But it, I'm sure there were times. I know I said crossing the Atlantic, Christmas, New Year's, my birthday. I said, never again am I going to be on a passage on all those holidays and be alone. So when I remember that, it obviously I was feeling a need that to connect. But we did. Once I had the radio, we had a regular time that we checked in. And there were also networks where we chatted with each other. Did you guys catch any fish today? Or so, under really severe situation in the storm or something, you're probably not chatting away unless you needed help.
Did you catch some fish?
I caught a fantastic fish. I caught a Chesapeake. Oh gosh, what was he? I can't think what he was. Anyway, this boat was coming in, this charter boat, and it had a bunch of guys on the deck, and they're just coming up to anchor, and I had just anchored and discovered, I thought it was a garbage bag, and when I pulled it in, it was this mackerel. Yeah, it was a Chesapeake mackerel, I guess. Anyway, they came and I hollered over and I said, do you guys know how to clean a fish? They said, oh, what do you have? And I go, this. We'll be right over.
Did you guys have dinner?
We did. I gave them steaks and they invited me for drinks and I made poisson cru, a kind of ceviche for the Polynesia.
Wow.
And I took that over. And I saw one couple, we got together many times and kept in touch. I probably owe them a letter right now.
Favorite countries to arrive in ports? Do you have some that come to mind?
That question is probably the most common question I ever get. And I tell everybody with a big smile, I say, the one I'm in. And they all go away and say, she liked us best. But
I like that.
I will say Brisbane, I think, was the most gorgeous big city harbor to live in. And I was there about 5 months. Our front yard was the botanical garden.
Oh, my God.
And the whole city, there was a woman mayor that had rebuilt all the docks and everything. And it was just fabulous. But, I also like little quiet places. And, I have many. But mostly when I think about, I don't think about those things. I think about the people I met.
Of course.
And that's the connection for me.
What's happening now in your life? 2026. What are we looking at right now?
Right now, I am relaunching the movement system, which actually really helps relieve pain. It's one I really enjoy doing. As I said, I created a way to teach these that was an on-the-table therapy that I taught people how to do for themselves.
That's great.
And so that, I want to write a book about it because it's cutting edge, really the latest kind of thinking.
So it's not yoga, it's not Feldenkrais.
No, Feldenkrais had an influence on the woman that
I took Feldenkrais. I took Feldenkrais. I took yoga. I was a former tournament tennis player for 13 years. I had Rolfing. I've had a lot of different therapies and practices. So that's
this one turns off the head and lets the body guide you.
Wow. Okay.
So it's
Are you going to do some classes over where you are?
Oh, I'm always teaching. I'm teaching in a holistic medical center right now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about with regard to your solo journey in your 31-foot sailboat covering 2,700 miles across 40 countries?
I think it might be interesting to note when you asked me if I had faced death in a way,
Right.
and my closest encounter was the day I thought about stepping off the back of the boat. For real. I was down to $2. It was New Zealand.
Wow.
And I was sailing up the coast, and I was out of butter. I was out of coffee. I was out of almost everything. And thinking, I can't take care of me. I can't take care of her. And she deserves better than that.
Her
I don't
meaning
know.
the sailboat.
Yeah. And I looked at the back of the boat and I thought, maybe this is the answer. I just slide away. And something happened. I swear I always tell it as if somebody went tick, tick, tick. And I turned around and Tutakaka was here. It's a harbor. And that was where I'd been headed. And it was sunset. The kind where the clouds have big holes in them and the light just comes through in these big shooting rays. I had a friend, he called it godlight. And I saw that and I went, if I had done that, I wouldn't have seen this. Believe it or not, at that one moment, that was enough. I said, oh my gosh. When I landed up in Russell, I went to the post office. Money, money, money.
Wow. You
I
had
said,
support.
would that have been stupid? Everything I needed was right here waiting for me. For the rest of the trip, that was the thing that kept me together so many times. You don't know what's around the corner. Just keep painting, keep doing, blah, blah, blah.
I love that.
So
that's a real rainmaking kind of precept, is you don't. It's literally second by second, minute by minute, et cetera, that you don't know, but we live in a future and we live in a past, but we rarely live in the now.
yeah, that's right.
Did you ever witness a UFO? Or orbs?
Oh,
Or
not that I,
or something coming out of the water and taking off? Because many
Well,
ship members have seen that on big ships.
Okay. It wasn't quite like that.
Okay.
But in the Indian Ocean, which seemed to have more odd phenomenon than some of the other locations, all of a sudden, this is at night, and this perfect circle of light, 20, 30, 40 feet across, just lit up. And then another one over there. I don't know how many, but one would be gone and then another one. And it was like somebody had a spotlight down below. And I said, is there submarine
Wait, it's in the
down
ocean, right? It's in the ocean lighting up, right?
Right, yeah.
That's what I mean.
It was there, but I never saw any kind of conveyance or any evidence of life or anything, I don't know that it was the phosphorescence. It didn't look like that. I'm used to that. But this just literally looked like a searchlight somebody flipped on from something down below. But there were several. And,
yeah, they usually travel together. So the answer really is yes, but you don't know what they were. And because you can't identify them, you're not going to say yes. But I'm saying yes on your behalf.
Yeah.
Were you scared?
It was wild.
Were you scared when you saw all those lights?
I was awestruck. I wasn't scared. No.
It's, it's a divine pleasure and an honor to be able to talk with you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
No, but if you've got a dream, don't give up. Just go do it.
God bless you.
Do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with, learning from, and listening to Pat Henry, the brave sailor who circumvented the globe alone as the first and oldest woman to do it, covering 27,000 miles across 40 countries, and the author of By the Grace of the Sea, a woman's solo odyssey around the world. How do people get in touch with you, Pat?
My website is pat-henry.com.
Fabulous. pat-henry.com. And ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to sponsor any interviews on It's Rainmaking Time and support our work, you can contact us at itsrainmakingtime.com and like and share this particular interview and any interviews that you see. We really appreciate your support. The algorithms are quite tough these days on what you can and can't talk about. Adventure is something you can always talk about, and we really appreciate you being here. It's Rainmaking Time. Thank you so much, Pat.
It was a delight, Kim. I enjoyed every minute.
God bless you. Thanks so much.